The frozen winds howled across the barren landscape as Kira stood alone on the edge of the mountain. Her red hair moved wildly in the cold breeze, but she felt nothing. The ice could not touch her. It never could. She was born from fire, raised in flames, and her blood ran hot like molten lava. The humans of her village had always feared her, called her cursed, but now they needed her. The Ice Kingdom had expanded too far. Their frozen armies had consumed 3 human territories in just 2 months. Villages were turned to ice. Families were frozen where they stood. Children became statues of frost, their screams trapped forever in their cold prisons. Kira had watched her own mother die that way. She remembered the moment clearly. The ice soldiers had come in the night, their bodies made of pure frozen water, their eyes glowing blue like the coldest winter stars. Her mother had pushed her into the cellar and told her to hide. Kira was only 7 years old then. She had watched through a crack in the wooden floor as the soldiers touched her mother. The frost spread instantly across her skin, turning her warm flesh into ice. Her mother's last word was her name, Kira, then silence. Then nothing but the sound of cracking ice as the soldiers moved on to find more victims. That night, something awakened inside Kira. The fire that had always been sleeping in her soul burst forward. The cellar exploded in flames. The wooden house above her burned to ash in seconds. And when the ice soldiers turned to face this new threat, they found a small girl standing in the center of an inferno. Her eyes glowed orange and red. Her skin seemed to pulse with inner heat. She screamed, and fire erupted from her mouth, her hands, every part of her body. The soldiers melted before they could take another step. Their frozen forms turned to water, then steam, then nothing at all. That was 15 years ago. Kira had spent those years learning to control her power. She traveled to the volcanic islands in the south where the fire monks lived in temples built inside active volcanoes. They taught her to breathe fire, to create flames from nothing, to become fire itself. She learned that she was not cursed. She was blessed. She was one of the rare humans born with elemental blood. The monks called her kind the Embered Children, humans who carried the essence of ancient fire spirits in their veins. Most Embered Children could only create small flames, enough to light candles or warm their hands. But Kira was different. Her power was vast, almost unlimited. The monks believed she was the reincarnation of the first flame, the original fire that burned at the beginning of time. Now she stood facing the greatest threat humanity had ever known. The Ice Kingdom was not a human nation. It was ruled by beings called the Frost Lords, ancient creatures who had existed since the first winter fell upon the world. They hated warmth. They hated life. They wanted to cover the entire planet in eternal ice. For thousands of years, they had been confined to the far northern regions, trapped behind magical barriers created by human mages long ago. But those barriers had fallen. The old magic had faded, and now the Frost Lords were free. Their armies numbered in the millions. Soldiers made of living ice, beasts carved from frozen wind, giants whose footsteps created blizzards. They moved south like an unstoppable tide of cold death. Human armies tried to fight them, but their weapons shattered against the ice. Their fires were extinguished by the freezing winds. Their soldiers froze solid before they could swing their swords. City after city fell. Kingdom after kingdom was consumed. The humans were losing. They were dying. And soon, there would be nothing left but ice. The human kings had sent messengers to find Kira. They begged her to help. They promised her gold, land, titles, anything she wanted. She refused all of it. She did not fight for rewards. She fought because it was right. She fought because she remembered her mother's frozen face. She fought because she was human, and humans did not surrender. They did not give up. They did not die quietly. Humans burned bright, even in the darkest cold. Kira raised her arms and closed her eyes. She reached deep inside herself, to the core of her power, to the place where the eternal flame lived. She had never used her full strength before. The monks had warned her that it could kill her. That much fire could consume her body, burn her from the inside out. But she did not care. If she died, she would die fighting. She would die standing. She would die like a human should. The first flames appeared around her feet, small and gentle like candlelight. Then they grew. The fire spread outward in a circle, melting the snow, turning the frozen ground into warm earth. The flames rose higher, reaching toward the dark sky. They changed color, from orange to red to pure white. The heat was incredible. Rocks nearby began to glow and melt. The air itself seemed to burn. Kira opened her eyes, and they were no longer human. They were two balls of pure fire, blazing with power beyond imagination. She spoke a single word in the ancient language of flame, a word that had not been spoken for 10,000 years. And the fire answered. From the flames around her, shapes began to form. First 1, then 10, then 100, then 1,000. Fire soldiers, burning warriors made of living flame, each one carrying weapons of pure heat. They stood in perfect formation, their empty eyes fixed on their creator. Kira had done what no human had ever done before. She had created a burning army. But she was not finished. She spoke another word, and more shapes emerged from the inferno. Fire horses with manes of flame. Burning wolves that left trails of ash wherever they walked. Dragons made of pure fire, their wings spreading across the sky like sheets of burning light. Her army grew and grew until it matched the size of the Ice Kingdom's forces. Fire against ice. Heat against cold. Life against death. The Frost Lords sensed her power from their frozen palace, hundreds of miles away. The Ice King himself rose from his throne of eternal winter. He was the oldest of his kind, a being of pure cold who had existed since the first snowflake fell from the heavens. He had never known fear. He had never known defeat. But for the first time in his endless existence, he felt something strange in his frozen heart. It took him a moment to recognize the feeling. It was doubt. Kira began to march. Her burning army moved with her, a tide of flame sweeping across the frozen landscape. Everywhere they walked, the ice melted. The snow turned to water, then steam. The frozen earth became warm and soft again. Plants that had been trapped in ice for months suddenly sprang back to life. Birds that had been frozen solid began to move, their wings carrying them into the warming sky. Kira was not just fighting the Ice Kingdom. She was undoing everything they had done. She was bringing the world back to life. The first battle happened at the edge of the human territories. A force of 50,000 ice soldiers had been preparing to attack the last free human city. They saw Kira's army approaching and formed their battle lines. Their generals, beings of ancient frost, commanded them to hold. They believed their numbers would be enough. They were wrong. Kira did not slow down. She walked straight toward the enemy, her burning army following behind her. When she was close enough to see the cold light in their frozen eyes, she raised her hand. A single gesture. That was all it took. A wave of fire erupted from her palm, a tsunami of pure heat that crashed into the ice army like the anger of a god. The front lines evaporated instantly. The soldiers behind them tried to run, but fire was faster than ice. Within minutes, the entire army was gone. 50,000 enemies, reduced to steam and ash. The news spread across the world like the fire itself. The humans had hope again. They rallied behind Kira, joining her march northward. Soldiers who had lost everything to the ice picked up their weapons once more. Farmers who had watched their families freeze took up arms. Even children, survivors of destroyed villages, followed at a safe distance, watching this human woman lead her burning army against the frozen darkness. Battle after battle, Kira won. Each victory pushed the Ice Kingdom further back. The Frost Lords sent their strongest warriors, their most powerful beasts, their most ancient generals. All of them melted before her flames. The Ice Kingdom began to shrink. The territories they had conquered started to thaw. Frozen humans began to warm, some of them even returning to life as the ice left their bodies. Kira was not just winning a war. She was reversing a catastrophe. Finally, she reached the gates of the frozen palace, the heart of the Ice Kingdom. The Ice King himself stood before her, surrounded by his most loyal guards. He was massive, a towering figure of pure frost, his crown made of icicles that had formed at the beginning of time. He looked at this small human woman and laughed, a sound like cracking glaciers. He asked her if she truly believed she could defeat him. He reminded her that he was eternal, that winter always came, that cold always won in the end. Kira listened to his words. Then she smiled. She told him that he was wrong. She said that winter always ended, that cold was always defeated by warmth, that darkness always surrendered to light. She said that humans were not weak. They were not victims. They were survivors. They adapted. They fought. They burned with a fire that no ice could ever extinguish. She raised both hands, gathering every drop of power she had left. The Ice King attacked, sending a blizzard of frozen death toward her, but her fire was stronger. It cut through his storm like sunlight through shadow. Her flames wrapped around him, melting his ancient form, destroying his eternal body. He screamed as he died, a scream that echoed across the frozen wastes. And then he was gone. Without their king, the Ice Kingdom collapsed. The remaining Frost Lords fled to the darkest corners of the world. The frozen armies crumbled into water. The eternal winter ended. Spring came to lands that had not seen warmth for months. The humans had won. Kira stood alone in the ruins of the frozen palace. Her army had faded, returning to wherever fire goes when it is done burning. She was tired, more tired than she had ever been. But she was alive, and more importantly, humanity was alive. They would rebuild. They would recover. They would remember this day, the day when one human woman stood against the endless cold and won. She looked up at the sky, now clear and blue for the first time in ages. Somewhere beyond those clouds, her mother was watching. Kira smiled, and for just a moment, a small flame danced in her palm. The fire would always be with her. And as long as she lived, she would use it to protect her people. Because that was what humans did. They fought. They survived. They burned bright until the very end.